All Indiana Politics is your premier source for Indiana politics, focusing on issues that matter to you.
I still want us to be the best in the Midwest.
We can't afford another lockdown.
Give the citizens of this country the relief they need.
Education in the state of Indiana remains priority number one.
In-depth, nonpartisan coverage.
We don't know exactly where the economy will be in January.
People are worried with good reason.
Exclusive interviews with Indiana's political leaders.
We have the resources here in the state of Indiana to care for those who are in need.
Expert analysis on critical legislation.
We need to reform those laws.
This recovery is going to take some time.
We've got to anticipate that there'll be a budget shortfall.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
And welcome to All Indiana Politics on this Sunday morning. We start today with Indiana's lawsuit to block the new federal COVID-19 vaccine mandate. It took just a few hours after OSHA revealed details on the mandate for Attorney General Todd Rokita to say the state will sue to block it. The mandate would require companies with more than 100 employees to have their workers be vaccinated or be tested weekly and wear masks. Rokita argues the Biden plans violates personal liberty and state sovereignty.
This is not a workplace issue. It's been with us. It's been with us at our homes. It's been with us on our sports teams. It's been with us in our kids' schools. It's been with us everywhere. And so it's, again, egregious and insidious that you'd use a body of law that was meant to protect workers at the workplace from dangerous toxicities, from other directly unsafe situations, to use it in this fashion to cover something that is a much bigger part of our lives.
Let's welcome in Congressman Andre Carson now. The Biden administration says they need this mandate in order to restart the economy to help with the economic recovery. Do you agree?
Well, certainly. I certainly do. I think that COVID has wreaked havoc on our economy. I think we've seen a dip. We are now on the incline, but we have to do much more. And in the midst of so many contentious legislative battles, we're battling right now to pass a Build Back Better and the BIF, or the infrastructure bill. And with so much contention, I think that Biden has to demonstrate some kind of leadership, because the American people are suffering. And I think who better than the president to be bold, to be firm after having returned from the G20 summit to make a statement about employees and how they're treated.
I know we're short on time, but since you brought up the infrastructure bill, where do you stand on it right now? Do you like what's in that bill?
Well, you know, I'm from Indiana, and we're the crossroads of America, and I'm always supportive of infrastructure. I mean, we're talking about the creation of 15 to 20 million jobs over the next decade and a half. And so I certainly support it. Is it everything I wanted? No, but the idea is to push through monumental pieces of legislation to go back and make corrections. We did it with Social Security, we did it with Medicare and Medicaid, and we can do it with infrastructure.
You talked about the possibility of things changing when it comes to the dynamics of politics here in the future. And that kind of brings me to my next question, which is the results from the elections that we saw on Tuesday, specifically Virginia and New Jersey. Were you surprised by that? And are you concerned for the future of the Democratic Party?
Well, I was disappointed. I think that what it has shown is that you can win elections by saying things that cause division, things that exacerbate the vitriol that's in the environment, and you can do and say things that speak to the worst of our fears. And I think that Democrats have responsibility to make our messages more succinct and more clear, and show that we are the party of inclusion, not exclusion, and that we cannot allow our colleagues on the other side of the aisle to control the narrative. And the narrative is that our country is changing rapidly, but this is the country for everyone, regardless of your race, creed, or color, or sexual orientation.
Are those results going to have an impact on what's going on in the House?
I would hope not. I think some people are spinning it that way. My hope is that we can pass these two very important bills this week, or at least by the end of the week, so we can move forward with more important things. We still have to continue some continuing resolutions that are already up there, and we have more important work to do next year. I think we have to deal with education in a very meaningful way. We have to make sure we're doing what's right on behalf of our veterans in a meaningful way, and my hope is that next year's legislative agenda will contain these things.
Congressman, I know you're short on time, but I want to get your thoughts on this because you held a committee meeting this week specifically to talk about domestic terror threats. What exactly are those?
Well, I think since 1995, it is clear that domestic terrorism is on the rise. We have a rise of white supremacist organizations. We have empathizers and sympathizers. Unfortunately, in police departments across our country, we have them in our military as well. I mean, I unfortunately receive death threats regularly from some of these folks, and it is a point of contention and concern. Having worked in law enforcement, having come from the Intelligence Fusion Center with the Indiana Department of Homeland Security, I understand these threats very intimately, and it's something that I want to do in an oversight capacity as the chair of the Counterterrorism Committee on the Intelligence Committee, to have the FBI present as they were, have the Department of Homeland Security present as they were, and to get answers and to see how they're coordinating with state and local law enforcement in terms of making sure information is shared regularly.
One last question. Should we be more concerned about foreign terror threats or domestic?
I think both. There seems to be an effort by foreign entities, state and non-state actors, to influence local groups, to cause deeper division, to spread misinformation, to cause attacks, spur attacks against government officials and government employees, as well as kind of spread the kind of information that would only benefit a foreign government or foreign entity and distract them from some of the real issues. And so this disinformation campaign is nothing new. We've been fighting disinformation campaigns for centuries now, but it's now more modernized through the vehicle of social media and the internet. And unfortunately, some of these extremist elements in our society are being influenced by these foreign entities. Some of the exchanges are known, some of the exchanges are indirect, and a lot of these foreign entities are using cover organizations like NGOs to build alliances and maybe even give money to some domestic groups, all in an effort to influence them to ultimately do their business.
And we thank the Congressman for joining us from inside a very busy Capitol building. Coming up, an Indiana senator wants Congress to step in and block the federal vaccine mandate. We go one-on-one with Mike Braun next on All Indiana Politics. Welcome back to All Indiana Politics. On this Sunday, we stay with the vaccine mandate. Indiana Senator Mike Braun is leading a GOP fight in Congress to block the OSHA rule on vaccines from ever taking effect. He calls the mandate for private businesses unconstitutional, unprecedented, and unbelievable. Senator Braun is the newest member of our All Indiana Politics team, Adam Pinsker.
Senator, thank you for taking the time, and I want to talk to you about President Biden's proposed regulation that will require businesses with over 100 employees to be vaccinated for COVID-19. You have major concerns about that. Let's talk about some of those.
Well, I do. I'm leading the effort to have the formal opposition to it. It's called the Congressional Review Act, and 41 of my other Republican cohorts are on it. I believe the other 8 will as soon as they actually release the details of it. A little harbinger of what's to come, the federal mandate, which was kind of fleshed out a little earlier for contractors and their own employees, visited with the Prison Bureau Federal in Indiana, worried about losing a fourth of their workforce when they got to that point where it was either, get jabbed or lose your job. Places like Crane Naval Weapons Center down near where I live, many long-term employees and they haven't had any issues with COVID because all of these places, whether it's a prison, a defense location, especially businesses, even schools, have had protocols in place that have really gotten a rhythm of how you deal with it. And now doing this while things are ebbing, getting into a point where finally maybe we're clearing the worst of it, this could be the single biggest thing that impacts businesses through that whole journey. And it's right when they're getting their feet back on the ground. So there's broad, concern about it, not to mention the intrusion of the federal government into certain areas of freedom and liberty. This is more about paid people to keep their employees there, up to 500 employees. Now you've lowered the threshold to 100, and you're going to force anywhere from maybe 10 to 20% of certain workforces to leave the job. that we've been trying to have them stay there and keep.
Have you spoken to the Biden administration, to the Labor Department beforehand, to perhaps broker a compromise and head off any kind of stalemate over this?
See, this is a ruling. It's not a law. It's not even an executive order. So, and they're doing it through OSHA, and they purposely, I think, drug their feet because they've been getting a lot of blowback leading up to it with what happened in the election, in Virginia. There could be a political reason that they pull back, but just like on the border where it was working so well pre-COVID, pre-Biden, that's now exploded to something that is along with mandates and jobs in the economy, ironically, the big issues out there. They generally won't back down unless they're just politically forced to. That may be the case with what happened in Virginia and how this is kicking up such a stir across the country. I've nonstop since the idea of being forced to, regardless of what you think about a vaccine. Most people, I think, feel we were lucky to have it. And if you don't have a good reason, you should choose to get it. Axios did a poll, 14% say they agree with being forced to get it or lose your job.
What you mentioned a Congressional Review Act a moment ago. What would that do?
So that's the only tool you have. And as long as it's initiated by one senator and one member of the House, it forces a privileged vote to bring it to the floor, where you've got to vote either to uphold the rule or to cancel it. If we get one or two Democrats, that may be the case now with how politically they may be afraid in some of these swing states that if they vote to uphold the rule, they may lose their job. So who knows?
Have you heard from Hoosier businesses, small businesses who have around 100 employees who feel like they would not be able to retain those employees if this rule took effect?
Nobody's worried about losing all their employees, but as tough as it's been and as many people that aren't back to work, most businesses are 5 to 10% understaffed already, but they're getting by. And if you hit them with another 10% walking out all at the same time, up to 20 to 25%, the sad thing is it could put them in the most peril they've been in during this whole navigation through COVID. Talked to hundreds of them, phone calls coming in, and most just thinking it wouldn't happen because it's that preposterous. Now that you're getting closer, they're getting scared.
The White House cites some economic advisors who say that the mandate would spark some economic recovery. Do you agree with that?
That's a political point of view. My point of view on how you deal with COVID when it was such an unknown, take it seriously. Don't dismiss it. But early on, businesses, organizations, schools included, had protocols in place where most of the transmission was not happening where you were during the day. Most of it was happening with what you did with your time outside of work or school. And this mandate stuff from the federal government has never been there before. Even states that did it with quick lockdowns, long time keeping them there and not being quick to get them off, or mandates like this, many of those states needed a federal bailout. So there's not been a clear approach of what has really been beneficial, other than for the reasons I stated earlier, most just think this is beyond the pale. The irony is that we're doing this when COVID is ebbing, cases are getting lower. We got more people vaccinated. Why would you put an ultimatum that could have a mass exodus of your workforce? Doesn't make sense.
Senator, thank you so much for taking the time this afternoon. We appreciate it. And you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
All right, coming up, so what's the political fallout in Indiana from the vaccine fight and from Tuesday's elections? Our experts ready to talk about that next on All Indiana Politics. And welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we welcome back Democrat Drew Anderson, and also welcome to the show for the first time, Republican Allie Bartlett. Allie, Welcome. You've worked on campaigns here in Indiana and worked in the State House of Representatives. So let's start with you here. Will this vaccine mandate that we've been talking about mean more backlash for President Biden, in your opinion?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here, excited to be a part of this conversation. To answer your question, I think this absolutely means additional backlash for the Biden administration for several reasons. First and foremost being, just what we saw with the elections in Virginia. This sends a message to Americans that Joe Biden doesn't have faith in the American people, and that he thinks that he needs to implement government mandates in order to entice people into doing something that they may or may not want to do for a various wide variety of reasons. I think it absolutely means backlash for the administration and for statewide elections across the country.
All right, Drew, your response on this one?
Well, Democrats have been on the record here in Indiana saying that every Hoosier, it's their freedom and choice to get a vaccine. But it's also the responsibility for the state and federal government to make sure that we can put the pandemic behind us. And that means that we have to update our vaccine guidelines. And if folks don't want to get a vaccine, that's up to them. But at the end of the day, we're moving on, and we have to get more. We're at 50%. Vaccination rate in the state. We need to get more folks, more shots in arms to make sure we could get herd immunity, and that's where we stand from the Democratic side.
We talked earlier in the show about the lawsuit, the pending lawsuit, and Drew, we'll stay with you here. Is the Rokita lawsuit about the vaccine, or in your opinion, about maybe running for another office in 2024?
Well, Todd Rokita, the only thing he thinks about is the next office he wants to run for. And I will say, when I listened to that interview, he claimed that there's going to be job loss, but Friday's jobs report that came out, over 500,000 jobs were created across the country last month. And then additional revisions from the, Labor Department said that even more jobs were created a couple months before. So that's a 600,000 average of job creation a month under the Biden administration. So I'm not seeing where he's getting those numbers, but it just goes back to the extreme partisanship that party usually governs by, and that's divisive for our state.
Allie, Drew brings up a good point. Those jobs did look good on Friday.
Yeah, I think when we're talking about job creation, that's a little bit different than employee retention. And where we're really going to see a hard hit here is on employers in the state of Indiana. I mean, I've seen it firsthand from people I know, from people in my family. It's hard enough to keep employees around right now. Imposing another mandate on employers, that's going to be the hardest hit part of all of this. In a time when we're supposedly going to be building back better from the pandemic, I just don't understand how placing certain mandates and requirements on employers that are going to be costly to them and they're going to be difficult to impose, they're going to drive people away from the workforce. And that's going to be a real challenge for Hoosier small business owners. And when I say small business, of course, I mean even those with just over 100 employees. That's still a small business in some ways, and it's going to be really difficult for them to keep their employees around with these really strict mandates in place. And not to mention the fact that they will in no way be able to afford those types of fines that can be placed on them.
Okay, we'll see what happens on that. I just want to move the conversation along here. We're short on time. I want to talk about Tuesday's elections, Allie, if you don't mind. I know you're probably okay with this. What does it tell you about how Republicans should run in the next two elections?
Yeah, well, needless to say, I was really encouraged by the outcomes on Tuesday. Even in New Jersey, a state where we didn't expect the Republican to do as well as they did. To me, this just says that America is waking up, and the faith that they placed in Joe Biden was misplaced, and they're realizing that. It says that Republicans are running on the same platform that they have for years, and it's resonating with people that we are the party of parents. We are the party that really is there for the middle class family and to elevate their voice. And that's what we're doing, and that's what people are seeing, and that's why we're going to continue to see success.
Drew, your takeaway from last Tuesday?
It's a state election and an off year, so it's apples and oranges. But I will say, I'm going to disagree with Allie here. The Republican Party, the last couple of years, all they've run on is manufactured culture wars. They do not stand for middle class Americans, especially here in Indiana. They gutted wages here in the state through right to work, and folks have been struggling ever since. And that's why what's interesting is that Indiana Democrats, we've been traveling across the state all this year, rural and big, really touting broadband investments, livable wage jobs, and fully funding public schools. And those are winners. And we're going to do that all next year. And we're excited to keep going and really pushing for that Build Back Better agenda.
Yes or no from both of you in this, because I'm really tight on time. Will Tuesday's election have any impact on 2022? Drew?
Not in Indiana.
Allie?
I think absolutely. I mean, in the words of the vice president, this is going to have an impact on elections going forward.
All right, we'll see what happens. Drew Anderson, always good to see you, sir. And Allie Bartlett, thank you for joining us for the first time.
Thank you very much.
We'll be right back.
Take All Indiana Politics on the go with you. Download our podcast now. Part of the All Indiana Podcast Network and allindianapodcastnetwork.com.
And thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics on this Sunday. We'll be back here next Sunday morning at 9:30. Have a great rest of your weekend. But remember, Veterans Day is this week on November 11th. Go out, say thanks to a veteran. We'll be honoring them here on Wish TV and wishtv.com all week long. Have a great rest of your weekend.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Watch All Indiana Politics live Sunday mornings at 9:30 on Wish TV and at wishtv.com. Subscribe to this podcast and listen weekly here on the All Indiana Podcast Network. And be sure to discover even more great podcasts at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.